Sergeant
Good.
Jones, how you doing today?
Just fine. Now I remember who you are. I
Yeah, I
who.
know. I was gonna say when you see my face, you'll know exactly who I am.
Oh, I'm glad to get that update why you left me.
Yes, I had to leave under those circumstances, but we worked a lot of days and nights over at the Emmylou Olson Center and over at the E. Pat Larkin Center.
Mm-hmm.
That we
And
showed.
and this young man down here to my bottom, this your big brother or your little brother?
That is my big brother. Let him, Wayne, go ahead and introduce yourself to him.
How you doing, Mr. Jones? I'm Wayne Adams. I'm Daryl's older brother.
Big brother.
Yes.
And since we're not recording, I'll beat you up. I'll beat you up now. He doesn't know me, does he?
No, I don't think he's probably met you before somewhere.
We're recording now.
Oh, I gotta be on my professional behavior now. Okay.
Yeah, you are. You always good. You good, Sergeant
Okay.
Jones. Okay, so we're having a virtual interview with former BSO deputy. He's retired now, Sergeant Willie Jones, and I had the opportunity to work with him and when he was working as a BSO deputy, and he's a good man, and he's running for Sheriff of Broward County, Florida. So,
Yes.
Sergeant Jones, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your law enforcement experience?
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. Mr. Wayne, nice meeting you. Nice seeing you.
Nice meeting you.
As the listeners know, I'm Willie Jones, born and raised in Miami. Was educated in the public school system there. I'm a graduate of Miami Central High, class of '73. I started my law enforcement career in 1975 with the Metro-Dade Corrections Department. I worked there for 5.5 years. After that, I went to the city of Fort Lauderdale, where I worked for 8.5 years. Upon leaving the city of Fort Lauderdale, I went to work as a consultant with the federal government, where I traveled all over the country teaching community policing and community relationship building to citizens, organizations, and mainly police departments. Upon leaving there, I came back to Broward County, and I worked as a consultant. I wrote 3 youth programs. 2 of them are still in the school board system right now, dealing with youth behavior, decision-making, cultural awareness, cultural diversity. Then my wife says, you need to go back to work. So I went back to my passion. I went back to police work. I worked with the Broward Sheriff's Office for the final 17 years of my career. In working with them, I held many different positions as far as responsibilities. The highest rank that I achieved was sergeant. And the reason I only achieved that rank of sergeant is because I was never promoted. I passed 3 lieutenant's exams consecutively, which stated that I spent 6 years on the promotion list and didn't get promoted. I believe the reason I wasn't promoted was because I didn't belong to the clique. I didn't kiss the ring. I believed in change. If something was wrong, I stated it was wrong. And that leads me to probably your next question. Why am I running? I need to hear the question. Prompt me.
Well, that was going to be my first question, to tell us, why are you running for Sheriff of Broward County, Florida?
As you know, in 2016, we ran. And the reason we ran was because of my passion for law enforcement and the community. I realized back then that there was problems in law enforcement, not just BSO, but law enforcement in general. I spent about 40 years in law enforcement. That represents about 62% of my life in law enforcement. And I witnessed how they policed our communities, or as I state, how they under-policed our community, how they underserved our communities. I witnessed the lady of justice, the one that wears the blindfold. I watched that blindfold get raised till it's totally off. And what I simply mean by that is that she's now favoring the rhetoric to special interest group, special interest money, special interest politics. And what we need to do is get back to what matters most. That's making Broward County safe, making its citizens safe, but more especially making its most vulnerable citizens safe, and that's our senior citizens and our children. It's time to bring a change. It's time to get back to what really matters, and that's keeping us safe, making us safe. And unfortunately, in 2016, we ran on bringing the best practices of the 21st century. President Obama put together a task force, and they produced a paper out of it, a document. And if anybody in law enforcement was to implement 60% of that, not the whole thing, just 60%, we would not be experiencing what we're experiencing now. Later on in the interview, we can get into some of those pillars, the strategic strategies that they put together. But the reason I'm running, most people that are in this race have been the sheriff or are the sheriff or was the chief of police or a high-ranking official in the sheriff's office where they had ample enough time to make these changes. They did not do it. Now they're coming to our community, says, I am the best person for your community. I'm the best person for change. But if they were sitting in position to make those changes back then, the question now becomes, why now? What's your motivation? What's making you run for this office? Has someone promised you and given you a lot of money? Or are you working for certain politicians? The bottom line is we need someone in that office that matches up to our ethics, our beliefs, our character. We must make sure they're there. My grandmother said to me a long time ago, son, if you start out with a lie, you will end up with a lie. So if someone is coming to us, to our community, stating that I'm the best, and they are not truthful in the past, present, how can we depend upon them being truthful in the future? So I am running. I'm the change agent. I've always been the change agent. I believe we need real systemic change in all phases of our community, but more especially law enforcement.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, Sergeant Jones. Wayne?
Okay, Sergeant Jones, what are the most significant law enforcement issues facing Broward County in the next 4 years to you?
The most significant issues facing law enforcement in the next 4 years is right in front of us right now. The community does not trust the very people that been given or taken the oath to protect us. They don't believe the law enforcement community can actually provide the safety and security that they want. That's the most important thing. They will, most people say it's trust. I say, yes, it's trust. But they're expecting the community to trust law enforcement. And my statement is, you hear it all the time. Why should community trust the police or law enforcement? They're the one that broke that trust. So while they're demanding us to trust them, and they don't understand why we're not getting it, because they do give us backpacks, they do feed us, they give us bicycles, they make promises they don't keep, and they're wondering why we don't trust them, is because they violated the trust. So as the incoming sheriff, as the one coming in, the first thing I must do is not repair, but actually rebuild that trust factor between not just the African-American community, but to all of the communities. But since the African-American community is the one that's being hurt, because under the previous administration and this current administration, I'm not for sure if your listeners know, that 3 out of every 5 traffic stops are people of color. So that means we're getting stopped more often, we're getting more tickets.
Right.
8 out of every arrest under the previous and current administration were African Americans.
That's correct.
Yeah. So when we over police underserved. So when we start talking about building trust, we must start at the Epic Center, and the Epic Center is in the African American community, the communities of color.
Okay, and I got a follow-up question to that. That's pretty close to the same one. What is the biggest need of the Broward Sheriff Department right now, and what will you do to fill that need?
The biggest need right now is leadership. We need somebody that has the character, that has the ethical background to sit in that office. Because my belief is, if you don't trust the leader, how can you trust the people that's out there? The leader sets the tone. And if my background, be it personal or professional, don't match up to my actions, then I don't need to be there. And unfortunately, or unfortunately for them, but fortunately for me, if you do your history, you do your check on the individuals that are in this race, you gotta say, let's look at character. Leadership is more than just hiring or voting in a resume. You need to have everybody and everything about that person inclusive, because when they make those decisions, they're not in a vacuum of that resume. They're a vacuum of their learned experience, their upbringing, their cultural diversity. All that comes together in a package. So you can't separate the person from their background. So we must look at the leader that we're going to put in there and make sure his or her background, I can say his because there's no females running right now, his background matches up to their words, to his words.
Okay. All right, Daryl.
Sergeant Jones, do you believe that there's systemic racism within BSO? And if it is, how will you attack it and fix it?
The answer is yes. In 2015, when we ran, we did an interview with the Sun Sentinel. And the 5 candidates that were there, and 2 of them are actually running now. The question was posed by the Sun Sentinel political, what do you call those folks? Editor.
Editorial.
She says to us, do you believe the Black community is policed and treated differently than the white community? Of the 5 candidates, I'm the only one that said yes 4 years ago. The answer is yes. There's systemic racism there. How do we do that? Again, start with the leader. And when you walk in, let me back up. My master's is public administration with an emphasis on human resource management. And we're taught that if you want to change the culture of an organization, it starts at your hiring process. Who are you bringing through the door? What are the testing mechanisms are you utilizing to make your selections? Then you go to training. How are you training them and what are you training them with? And you say, why you're talking about systemic racism, why are you talking about that? Well, the police department still hires and trains from the 20th century practices and modalities. The police academy manuals and training that I went through in 1975, they're still using it. So you cannot remove that until you remove the instruments of training. And we have been looking at what can we do? First things first, police officer is a police officer. Even with my education, I will not be the best suited person to be the HR manager for a police agency. Not in the 21st century. We need to go find someone that knows the best hiring practices of the 21st century. Because let's be for real. Our children are not like us. They're not going to take what we take. They're not going to respond like we respond. Most of us was told, go get an education or get a good job to get a retirement. Our children want to be taken care of right now. So the benefit packages that we're offering these kids, these young people to come into law enforcement, don't match up to their needs. So we must take a look at how we hire people and what tools are we using to attract them there. Once we get in there, you change the entire training modality. Police departments, when you come in as a police officer or law enforcement, they instilled in you to have the warrior mentality. And if you have the warrior mentality and you take the first three letters of that, W-A-R, you're always at war. That's the reason we're having a lot of the issues that we're having is because of what's being taught, what's being trained. It's built into the culture. We must change that culture. The other people in this race says, I'm gonna bring on changes. The question our community should be asking them, you were in place. Why now? What's the difference between when you were there, why you're there, what's the difference? The current sheriff right now who was appointed, the first thing he went in and he started training. He says, we're gonna do active shooter training. If you read the news accounts, there were many deputies, including one with a brain bleed, that was suffered during training, the warrior mentality. We need to change how we train our individuals. Our individuals are not, what I wanna say, I'm trying to be politically correct. We don't live in a dictatorship. They're not here to prosecute and put down the people they serve. They are protectors. They're servants. That's the training that we have to put in place, that we're here to serve the community. We're here to make sure they are safe from people who don't want to live by the rules, don't want to live by the laws. Think about this. Most statistics says that only 5% of our population commits crime. That means 95% of the people are doing what's right or trying to do what's right. Police agencies, law enforcement agencies do what? They take 95% of their resources to chase that 5%, and they forget about the 95% that's doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's the reason you see the bulletproof vests. That's the reason you see the armored vehicles. That's the reason you see the long rifles. Not saying those are tools that they don't need, but we sure don't need to spend 95% on them. We're not at war. So those are some of the things that we're looking at and that we will be changing.
And that was like one of my follow-up questions that I'm glad that you did answer that. And my follow-up question to that while you're on that, if you were elected sheriff, what changes would you make immediately?
When I become the elected sheriff.
Speak it into existence.
Yeah, when the voters vote me in, first things first, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna walk in. I need to meet with every deputy, every staff member that's working for the agency. I don't mean doing what we're doing now, although this is a great tool, but I need to walk in and say, this is a new day. This is what the direction we're moving in. We're moving away from the warrior mentality to the service component that we should be. If you don't like the move we're going in, we will accept your resignation. Although anytime you make a drastic change like this, we expect attrition. We expect people to walk away because there's some people just will not be able to function in this new environment. But that's okay. If they move out of the way, that gives us more room to hire the people that we want there anyway. That's first thing. Then we're going to meet with, notice I didn't say I was going to meet with my command staff. See, everybody say, you need to meet with your command staff first. No. You know the reason why I won't meet with command staff first? Anything above the rank of captain is They work at the
Leisure of the Sheriff.
That's right. And the only thing I need them to do is follow through. These are not veiled threats. And, you know, for anybody that hears it, this is not a veiled threat. This is a promise that there will be a change. Either you change and get on board, or you get left at the platform. So I don't need to talk to command staff. You know, those folks I don't need to talk to. I need to make sure the people that's delivering the service day to day understand we're changing where we're going, the direction we're going in. Because I've yet to see a captain, a major, a lieutenant colonel, a colonel, or even the sheriff go to a domestic violence call, go to a bank robbery call. The people that we need to ensure that they're going to have a buy-in are the people, the deputies, the CSAs, and all the staff workers that deliver the service to the community on a day-to-day basis. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to make sure they get the training they need. We're going to make sure they have the resources they need to do their job. But at the same time, once we spell out this is what direction we're going in, we're changing policy. We're changing disciplinary policy. We're going to make sure everybody understands that it's a new day. Now we deal with the union. We bring the union in because the union is the people that's supposed to protect the deputies from my policies and procedures, my practices. That's what they're supposed to do. So in order to get all of us on the same page, you sit down at the table with me. Any policy that we have, any practice that we have that's antiquated, outdated, and just wrong, just bad, we're going to remove it and replace it. So when we start disciplining people, if they mess up, there's no reason to go through a lengthy court battle to say you're violating someone's rights. With that being said, we know there's a Bill of Rights for law enforcement. But the Policeman Bill of Rights should not and will not supersede the Constitution of the United States or the state of Florida, because the Constitution of the United States starts out, we the people, not we the police.
Okay, Daryl.
As I live in Deerfield, and to my knowledge, I don't believe that there has ever been a black district chief here in Deerfield Beach, to my knowledge. Now, correct me.
There was one before your time.
Really? Oh, well, yeah.
Danny Wright.
Danny Wright. Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel?
Lieutenant Colonel Danny Wright, as he was moving up. I do believe he sat in that chair for a short period of time.
Short period of time. That's probably why I don't remember him. It was a short period of time. When you are elected sheriff, as you put it, as you speaking that into existence, will you be assigning more black? I'm specifically saying black because I would like to see more blacks as district chiefs. Will you be appointing more black officers who currently works within BSO? I'd like to see promotion from within.
That's going to happen.
Works with BSO, and would you be appointing more black deputies in districts? I think 1 through 10. I think, and then you have unincorporated areas.
Mm-hmm. The answer to your question is yes. 2015, 2016, when I ran, I had someone ask me the question, Mr. Jones, when you get elected, are you going to have an all-black command staff? You want to know what my response was? You didn't ask Scott Israel if he was going to have an all-white command staff, so why are you asking me that? But to get back on point, the answer is we're going to promote from within individuals that meet the criteria. I already know that blacks, women, LGBTQ people of color have been overlooked because they don't play golf with certain people. They don't sail with certain people. They don't kiss the ring. We know there are people in those arenas, the classifications I just mentioned, are duly qualified and overly qualified to be there. I think The reason we're having so many issues within the sheriff's office, there have been people promoted that was not qualified or credentialed to be there. The current sheriff is going around and says, I promoted more blacks, you know, in the history of the sheriff's office. Well, Sheriff, let me tell you this. Your undersheriff, Nicole Anderson, is the most qualified person at the agency right now. It took you 9 months to promote her. In fact, you brought in a friend from South Carolina who never held a position in law enforcement higher than the rank of patrolman, and you made him your undersheriff. Conveniently, 4 months out, before it's time for the election, I'm gonna promote a black female. My question would be, was it genuine? I know she has her credentials. And if you did what you said you had done, in the first 30 days, I looked at all of my command staff, I looked at all of their personnel jackets. She did not take another class from the time you were put in office to the time you promoted. So that tells me she was already qualified. What took you so long to promote her and the other blacks? These are the things when I talk about the blindfold of Lady Justice being removed. People are in position to start saying, I need to stay here, so I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna play to the powers to be there. If I need to promote blacks, I'm gonna promote blacks. If I need to give black communities money, I'm gonna give money. And the reason I say that, he just went before the county commission, and they gave him $708,000, in which he claims he's gonna get all black 501(c)(3)s. The question becomes, that's FTLE dollars, federal dollars that we get from confiscations. That money was there the day he was put in office. It took you 18 months to decide you need to do that. And be a little bit more drastic, 18 months and 2 months away from the election. Is this genuine, or are you trying to sway the election? Are you attempting to say, I'm gonna give you this? Now, I welcome that money for the communities because God knows we need that money in the community. But in 2015, when we ran, this was what we stated. We're gonna take part of that money of the BSO budget. We're gonna take part of that money and give it back to the community. We're talking about all the Pop Warner footballs, all the athletic stuff, all the glee clubs that our community have, all the dance clubs and everything. We already stated, we're not gonna ask you to compete for $50,000. We're gonna ask you to put in for a grant, which we're gonna be all inclusive, that we're gonna give you $25,000 to $50,000 annually to run your programs. And our premise is that you already have a connection with the community. You already have a connection with the children. You already have a connection with the parents. BSO do not need to be coming in, starting a program when programs are already existing. The only stipulation we're gonna put in there, you must teach anti-bullying, drugs, and gangs. That's all we're gonna ask you for with one main stipulation. Many of our young athletes have problems in school. $10,000 of that money that we give you must be allocated for a certified Broward County teacher to show up to your program Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And before your kids hit the field, the ones that are having problems, they must spend minimum of 30 minutes with that teacher working on their skill set. We're talking about developing the whole child, the whole community. So, and we know that if those programs didn't work, we wouldn't have the best Pop Warner Football League in the state of Florida. We know it's there, but now we got to start making our kids whole, because our kids can perform on the gridiron or the basketball court and they can run. But when they go to college, that's where they fall. So we got to start developing that child totally. And at the same time, if that teacher in school knows that kid, the relationship is already there. Those are some of the innovative programs, some of the innovative thought processes that we're talking about bringing to the sheriff's office under us. I want to take away from the sheriff's office doing community service work. And what I simply mean by that, I want to give it to the people that are the experts in doing it. I want to do law enforcement. I want to protect the people of Broward County. I don't want to have to worry about, can I raise enough money, get enough money to give out 20 bicycles? I don't want to do that at all. I want to make sure that money's there. And when people say that's going to be difficult to do, no. I think we'll be about $12 million shy of $1 billion budget come October. And if you understand what people tell me in business, there is, what word am I trying to use? There's a word I'm trying to find in my head where I can take 10% of that and put back. That money's already there. 10% of $1 billion is what? $100 million. How many lives, how many communities can we save? We're also we'll be looking at our service contracts. Who are we awarding those contracts to? I know I have, for the patrolman, I know I have 1,600 vehicles on the road. Why do I have to have all 1,600 go to one person? Why can't I find a legitimate auto mechanic in the community to change my oil, change my spark plugs, change the burnt out light? Why can't I have them do that? I'm not talking taking the big contract from everybody. I'm just talking about taking off a slice and giving it back to the community. And what that does for us, we're connecting with the community. Now that service, that garage can hire maybe 1 or 2 more people. That's 1 or 2 more people off the street that can help take care of their families. And that's the economic side of it that we're looking at. We know it's a holistic approach, and we know it's not going to have everything we're talking about now. It's not going to happen overnight. To turn around a Ski-Doo, you can turn it on a dime, turn it in a circle. To turn around an aircraft carrier, I need a lot of ocean. And we're on an aircraft carrier. But we do have the strategic plan in place. It will be there and it will change. We're just asking the community when we get there to work with us. Work with us. And I don't mean, yes, Willie Jones, you're the first Black elected sheriff. Yes, Willie Jones, I don't want people bowing down to me. I don't want nobody kissing my ring. You shine up. No. We're in this together. When the community is successful, we're successful. And it's not us against them. And that's the mentality that law enforcement have now. And that's the reason you're seeing so much uprising. That's the reason you hear the outcry of reform, because it's us against them.
And a follow-up to what you were saying, what Darryl was saying earlier about the blacks being installed as district chiefs. I know here in Deerfield Beach, a lot of municipalities, the city manager picks the chief here, like in Deerfield Beach. Our city manager picks the chief here. And every city manager we had has been white. So to me, I always saw them picking that good old boy system. I seen a lot of blacks were the executive or next to the chief, but they never was put, they never was installed as chief. And I blame that on the city managers thinking that's here, not just on the sheriff in those cities that have those type of contracts, what I'm saying. And like I say, here in Deerfield Beach, our city manager picks the chief. So I think people should, those questions should go to the city manager. Why he don't make that decision? Why he don't bring a black chief? And I don't think no one here in Deerfield Beach over the last few years has questioned. If they did, I don't know about it. So.
Okay, but in that same vein, when we change the culture and we start raising up the people that are duly qualified, and those are the people we're offering up to the city manager, instead of giving him someone that is substandard, or when I say substandard, I don't mean they totally are not qualified, but I have a better candidate.
Right.
And then this is where you make your selection. You know, but that comes with relationship building. That's my part. That I'm gonna have to sit down with the city manager, the commissioners, you know, the city attorney. That's my job. And that's the reason why I want to promote the folks who are duly qualified to run the districts, to run their commands, run their divisions, so I can do the things as sheriff I need to do. And that's building those relationships with the cities, not just the contract cities, with all of the cities, all 32 cities. We must have that working relationship. Although we all, you know, each city has their own police department, we're still serving everybody in every city is a citizen of Broward County. I can't say because you live in the city of Fort Lauderdale, I can't protect you. Wrong answer. The Constitution says I'm the chief law enforcement officer. I'm supposed to have total control on law enforcement practices and services in Broward County. With the understanding, we're going to give way to the jurisdictions. You run yours, but if you fail, we're here because they are citizens of Broward County.
Okay, you answered that. You have anything, Daryl?
Yes. Me personally, I had a little incident here just last year where I heard about 16 gunshots in my neighborhood, and I called it into dispatch, and I requested that I remain anonymous. And about 2-3 minutes later, 6 or 7 carloads of BSO deputies came to my house after I requested that I remain anonymous. And I saw them and I tapped on the window and I asked them, how can I help you? And he put his hand on his gun and he ordered me outside the house. And because they claimed that they were looking for the area where the shots came from, which leads me to my question. If you're elected sheriff, will you be in favor of spot shotters, and how will you get the money to put those spot shotters in? Because every time we ask for them here in Deerfield, they don't have the money. So will you be in favor of spot shotters?
The answer is yes. In Pompano, when they tested it about 10 years ago, I was the sergeant that actually was overseeing. I was the law enforcement connect to spot shotters, shot spotters, whatever. The answer is yes. The money is already in the budget. We just need to reallocate the money to the resources that we need to protect the community. You don't have $1 billion. We don't spend $1 billion in salaries, in benefits, in equipment. We don't. And if we do, there's an issue. When we get there, one of the first things you're going to do, we're going to ask for that audit. We're going to do that complete audit to see where the money's going and why it is going and who it's going to. Because that money simply belongs to the people of Broward County. It should not be going to a consultant because he walks in there, once a week, once a month and give a service. We should not be paying them that exuberant amount of cash. The money we should be paying them is whatever the service, a fair market price, but most of our resources should be directed to go back to the taxpayers, either in services or product. Just as plain and simple as that. And I'm gonna share something with you. When I was in Pompano, the administrative sergeant there, I'm laying in my bed, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, my phone rings. It's one of the commissioners. He did what you did. He called in anonymously about a loud party. 2 or 3 minutes later, the deputy show up, they're at his door. And when he called me, he was not a happy camper at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Neither was I. Neither was I.
But because I was an administrative sergeant, I had some leeway. I picked the phone up, called the duty officer, and says, have the duty sergeant, on shift's road sergeant, give me a call. But while he's calling me, I need you to dispatch that unit that went to the commissioner's house. Now send him to the address he needed to go to and shut that party down. Period. In the conversation. The sergeant called me, and they knew who I was because I worked for the major. The major and the captain. I didn't work for nobody else. And I says, You need to get around to that house. You need to go to the house, make sure that party's shut down, and you need to go apologize to the commissioner. You need to do that, period, in the conversation. This is the type of leadership that we're talking about. I'm a sergeant, he's a sergeant. Most sergeants will, well, he's a sergeant. No, wrong answer. Do your job. That should have never happened. Well, when I talked to the major, talked to the captain, I told him what I did, how I handled it. Well, that sergeant and those deputies were called in. They had to come back in, 9 o'clock in the morning. They got paid for it. But if you think the commissioner was unhappy, they were very unhappy.
Which is unfair to the taxpayers, because if they gone to the right house, they wouldn't have to come in and then be a burden on the taxpayers to get paid to come in to do a job they should have done right the first time, you know?
You're absolutely correct. And these are the changes that we must change within law enforcement. Once you take away the good old boy network, my friend, once you take away that, people will do their job. I tell people the best sheriff that I ever worked for, and I worked for several, was Ken Jennings. When Ken went to the roll calls, his statement was, ladies and gentlemen, I pay you a good salary to do your job. The only thing I'm requiring is you do your job. And that was it. The men and women of the Broward Sheriff's Office, they make handsome salaries.
Yes,
the only thing that as a sheriff and as a citizen is going to be requiring of them is to do the job. That's all we want them to do, is the job.
So to be clear, you will be in favor of spot shotters and finding the money in the budget to put those spotters in, even though we're told that it probably won't happen here in Deerfield because of funding.
The answer is yes. And if I have anything to do with it, it'll happen in Deerfield.
Not only just in Deerfield, but in high crime areas.
Well, see, it depends how what you define high crime areas.
Which is mostly the black neighborhoods. If you want to,
just because it's black don't make it a high crime near area. Right. Take you to Dania, Modella Park. You know about Modella Park?
Yes.
I went to Modella Park. I was assigned Modella Park. Modella Park was a high crime area, so they told me. It wasn't. It was over service area. Anything that happened in Modella Park, you generated a piece of paperwork. So when you do the statistics, it comes back in as a high crime area. But when we actually looked at the paperwork, Modella Park was the safest, statistically, was the safest zone in the city of Dania Beach. Yes, we had our drugs. We had our every now and then fights. We had a shot fired every now and then, but it was no more dangerous than the cities, the zone south, east, or west of it. Statistically, it's how you report what's going on.
And when you talk about over service, that reminds me of what was going on in Ferguson, Missouri, when the Justice Department went and did the study there. It was like they were giving out more tickets and taking more blacks to jail for any little crime. So of course, the crime statistics are gonna be high when everything that a black person do, or they're being charged more than any other community.
You're absolutely correct.
That's why we are always redline. Our areas are redlined when we are over service or the law enforcement abuse their authority in our neighborhoods, and a lot of people never see it that way. They never look at that angle.
No, because if you're looking at it, the narrative directs most conversations. I don't care what conversation you're in. If I want, say for example, Dixie Highway and 10th Street, if I want it to be a very dangerous traffic area, I write more tickets there. Right. I write more moving tickets there. Although people may be violating it, but if I put the emphasis there, that means it's going to show up on the radar a lot larger and brighter. Right. So when I talk about policing, we're talking proper policing, community policing. community policing.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Did you believe in community? Good. Do you believe in community policing? That was my next question. Okay. I'm glad you touched on that.
In 1981, 82, at the City of Fort Lauderdale Police Department, the late Ron Cochran sent me these classes to do community policing. When I talked about being that consultant with the federal government, that's what I was teaching. Not only am I a practitioner, I'm an instructor. To answer your question, yes, it works.
You know, because back in the days, we used to have cops used to get out, used to talk to the community. Mm-hmm. So back in the days, if crimes did go down, you had people within the community that would always help law enforcement to solve a crime, and they were the ear. Now, one thing I notice about the deputies here, they'll ride by you, and their perception is here, every Black person hate them. So mm-hmm. They'll ride by, and even some of the Black ones like that too. So let me be clear and fair. They'll ride by with like a chip on their shoulder, and they'll ride by, look the other way, won't speak, won't wave. So do you really think you're gonna get cooperation from a community that you have already damned already?
Alienated.
So you're not gonna get no cooperation from Black citizens or whatever, you know, when you already looking down on us. And that's how I feel. I mean, I can see one ride by here, they never nod their head, they never speak, and you can wave at them, they'll just look at you like, and that is missing. And that's why I say we need community policing.
But community policing is more than just getting out of your car.
Right.
It's more than just walking them. Community policing is understanding the culture of that community, understanding who's the leader, who's the informed leader, and who's the informed leader. Because each community has people that you can talk to that you never see at a city commission meeting, but they know everything that's going on. So you need to build those relationships. So when I teach community policing, I tell them, talk to Mrs. Smith and Mother Johnson that's sitting on the porch drinking that lemonade. Because they know more than anybody else.
Yes. And you're right, and that's how it was back in the 70s. Growing up, policemen used to get out, Officer Howard, other officers used to get out and come talk. They'll throw the football with us. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, you see that on TV, but it's not in our area, or if it is in our area, it's only for a photo op. You know, to make it seem like that we're all in this together when everyone knows it's not that. That's not true.
And I'm glad you used photo ops in that statement. We're all in this together. We're in the prime time of election time. And now you're seeing law enforcement officers and everybody kneeling with the very people 20 days ago will hit you in the head and take you to jail. Just for looking at it. Now everybody is saying we need to make a change. And we say, we being my campaign, where was this before George Floyd? In Pompano Beach, Greg Frazier. Remember Greg?
I remember him. The cop shot him. He was sitting in the backyard at his sister's place, correct? His sister place.
That was he's my second cousin by marriage.
Okay.
The young lady, Tammy Jackson, the one that had the baby in the jail cell by herself, was there for 6 hours. The question now becomes, if you were in place as a leader then, why didn't you attempt to change things then? Why now? Is it that you truly believe that change is on the horizon, or is this political correctness or political expedience? We need to challenge all of these candidates, not just in my race, mm-hmm. all the candidates that's running now. We need to challenge that question. If they're incumbent or if they were in place of power, the question needs to be asked, why now? And like I said, we can go back. I told you, in the 80s, I sued the city of Fort Lauderdale. I did the first Black police officers in Fort Lauderdale. When people are now handing out turkeys, the longshoremen helped me do Thanksgiving and Christmas. I was doing it before it was political expedient. I was doing it before we got to do this. In Dania, I had this guy, he was a multimillionaire. He owned a business there. And we developed a relationship. I could go to him and tell him about people in the community that need stuff. I remember one day I walked in and told him this lady was getting kicked out. She needed X amount of dollars. We're in his office. He yells to the secretary, "Write Mr. Jones, whatever the check amount." He just said, "Write it." He didn't question or not, just write him the check, let him go and take care of this lady. He later offered to start a foundation. He wanted me to operate the foundation. He was starting it with $100,000 and was going to guarantee me $50,000 a year to run it because he knew I would take care of the needs of the people. This is community policing. These are the relationships that you build. And this is what we want police officers to do. In speaking of that, we have 17 districts. Strategic plan. We're going to have 17 deputies, 2 CSAs assigned to community policing. Their main function will be community policing, developing those relationships, period. When the sheriff comes into Deerfield, when the sheriff goes into Pompano or anywhere else, if there's an issue, those individuals should already have those relationships made and done so we can address the issue. We should not be talking about bringing out the riot gear, bringing out the armored vehicles. Those relationships must be in place before the crisis. And I use this analogy. If the weather service tells us there's a Cat 5 hurricane sitting off the east coast of Florida and it's going to hit us, do you wait till it make landfall to close up? Or do you close up before it?
You close up before.
In policing, we've been closing up as it hit. That's the reason we have the civil unrest that we're having now. The warning signs have been given for years and years. George Floyd was not the first African-American male killed by law enforcement, unarmed. He was not. The warnings were there. Law enforcement, the government officials did not heed to the warning. So now when George Floyd gets killed and the country erupts, they're saying, "Oh, we didn't see this coming." Wrong answer. You didn't want to see it coming. You didn't think it would happen like this. You know, and as a leader, a good leader, learn from the past, manages in the future, but has a vision for the future. Mm-hmm. You gotta anticipate and expect things that may happen, that could happen. God forbid it happens, but if it happens, we're ready. We cannot allow it to happen. Thus, our communities are in shambles, especially communities of color. They don't trust the police. They don't trust the people we have there. They don't even trust the people in leadership. But the leadership, the political powers to be, think the best way to solve the issues, first let me go to your clergy and I'm gonna pay them X amount of dollars. If I keep the preacher happy, I can keep the community happy. If that don't work, I'm gonna feed you. If that don't work, I'm gonna give you a bicycle, backpack, or a turkey. Just make sure they're happy. And preacher, if that don't work, I'm gonna come to you. Those days are over. The generation that we're serving now are not as passive as the generation of my generation. And if we don't change how we police them and service this community, we're going to have these unrest from now on.
And while we're talking about change in George Floyd, what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota made me sick to my stomach. Mm-hmm. To see that man crying out for his mother, pleading for help, and they murdered that man. Mm-hmm. While he was already cuffed when 4 officers and I'm just guessing that was almost 800 pounds on his body,
Yes.
and one knee to the neck, which leads me to my question: that what are your thoughts on chokeholds and knees to the necks when making arrests? If that's any, I don't believe that that's in the BSO policy, but if it is, what changes will you make when you become sheriff?
If it's in the policy, it's gone. We're gonna just snatch that page right out of the book.
But what'll happen if a deputy is caught using a chokehold or a knee to the neck?
Whatever. Just because I take it out, don't mean they're not gonna do it, because that's how they were trained. That's the culture. You get caught doing an illegal hold, you don't have to cause death. You cause an injury, you can resign or I'm gonna fire you. Period. You're not trained like that. Let me say this. Canines, you know the dogs we have? All law enforcement, we go out of the country to bring the best breed of dog in to train them to track and bite. We get the deputies to match up with that dog. We put them in training. They become the best buds. The dog go home with them, the whole 9 yards. If that dog has 3 bites, we take that dog out of service. Now we want to know why that dog is biting so often. But mind you, we bought him to do that. We trained him to do that. But if he bites 3 times and he's an animal, we take him out of service. We get deputies that get complaint after complaint after complaint, like the one in Fort Lauderdale, 79 complaints.
Even for parents.
See what I'm saying? 79 complaints. That's ridiculous. We must put a tracking mechanism in place. Not only put a tracking mechanism in place, but have an end result of how many complaints, how much training we're going to give you before we release you. That must be in place. When we become sheriff, that will be put in place. That goes back to the union, labor agreements. We already know the union is going to fight us, especially IUPA, the one that gave Scott Israel the vote of non-confidence, the one that gave Tony the vote of no confidence. When we ran in 2015, I'm standing on the stage at the African American Research Library. This was after Jerry Mabine was shot and killed. This was after the grand jury indicted the deputy. I stood on stage and says, we will not give a killer an award. Well, this union decided to call me racist, anti-police. When we went for the endorsement, all the candidates agreed to 10 questions. We agreed to 10 questions. I'm the only African-American candidate at the time. I got question number 11. And the question, to summarize, why did you call him a killer?
He is a killer. And the judge should not have let him off.
Agreed. You know, but we live with that. The courts made their decisions. However we believe in it, we let it go. But as I stated to them then, and I'll state now, I didn't call him a killer. The grand jury did when they indicted him. Yes. I just said we wouldn't give him an award. But because the union rules that much power because of the people they represent, they decided they'll blackball me. In fact, we pulled off a post off Leo Affairs that says I was a Black Lives Matter candidate, and they said this in 2016. And I say, no, I'm not. I'm a constitutional observer. I believe in the Constitution, and there's nobody in this country above the Constitution, including folks that wear the badge and the gun.
Did you see the press conference or the executive order that President Trump signed today? Did you get a chance to see that?
No, I was preparing for this one. No, you guys are too important for me to sit there and listen to that. I catch the sound bites off that one.
It was so ridiculous. I mean, it has no teeth in any legislation that comes forward now from the Senate and the House. If it doesn't have a mechanism for punishment, it's baseless. It's no good to the average African American, because it's still giving them the green light to kill us. Well, let me just read something real quick about what Trump's police reform executive order is. It says, nationwide certification process for police department using a set of best practices, including on use of nationwide database to track excessive force complaints against individual officers, and sensitize programs where social workers sent out with officers with mental health related calls. But all of that, but it has nothing, it says nothing about punishment. And I keep hearing everything from all these politicians on TV, but I hear nothing on punishment for these officers, nothing. And I just hear nothing, and I just, and that's why people, especially Black people, are losing confidence in their police department, and that's why we don't trust the police. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't trust them at all.
Well, I've been a cop was a cop for 40 years, retired. I can tell you, 2 years after I put my badge on with Fort Lauderdale, I remember getting stopped by Metro-Dade police officers. I'm driving my, my 76, 77 Caddy, half line down roof. They kicked me over. When they, took me out the car, patted me down, and I had my off-duty weapon on my ankle. And the first thing he says, I got a live Negro, and then he used Negro. My face went to the back of my car window, and he continued to pat me down and shouting all those expletives to his partners. Started to pull the cuffs out, the handcuff me, and I said, if you check my left rear pocket, you'll find the ID to go with it. And the first thing he did after he found my ID says, hey man, I'm sorry, you should have told me. Wrong answer. Nobody should be treated like that, whether you're a cop, yay or nay. And this is the culture we gotta stop.
And use the N-word on top of that, and then he's gonna say, I'm sorry?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I made my complaint.
I would have filed a complaint against them.
No, I filed my complaint.
That's what my next question.
Absolutely.
And I didn't file it as a citizen. I went through the city of Fort Lauderdale as a police officer against another police officer, which takes it to a totally different level. Totally different level.
Why do other ethnic groups find it hard to believe the atrocities that are inflicted on Black people? Why do they not believe police brutalize Black people? I'm just asking you that from one Black person to another, for you being in law enforcement. Why is that so hard for them to comprehend that the police do not treat us equal as Black?
Because when you live in communities other than ours, and the only time you see a policeman is when he's sitting at the store, or he's walking around and he's waving and smiling, you say it's hard to believe that someone that's upholding the law can do this. But let's go back to the civil rights movement. When the civil rights movement got its biggest push was when the television cameras showed the police departments on mounted horses, putting the dogs on people, putting the water hoses on the little kids. That's when it turned around, when the world was able to see exactly what was going on.
Right.
What turned this around is that we saw George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds beg for his life. That's what changed. That changed everything. Now the world can't say it don't happen. They saw it, and they saw it other than body cam footage. That's what made the difference. People now, they're beginning to believe the stories that other people have told them, because if they didn't, we would not be having 21 days of civil unrest.
And continual protesting. And I think in the past, they thought that it was just gonna go away, that most Black people was gonna blow off steam for 3 or 4 days, and that was gonna be it. They need to understand one thing. Black people are focused now, the good majority of us, and we're not going to let this go away. And we're going to hold our public officials accountable, whether they like it or not. And they can call us racist all they want, because every time a black person speak up or speak out, then we're a problem. We're problematic. We're part of the problem. You know.
Well, see, one of the things, and we talked about it earlier, this is not a black-white issue. This is a generational issue.
Right.
The young people that we're talking about policing now, the kids that we fed, the kids that we changed diapers, the grandkids, these are the people that we're policing and providing services to. The only industry that has not moved to the 21st century, the best practices, are law enforcement. And it's on full display of their deficiencies now. We must demand that they reform and they move to the best practices of the 21st century. This is something we've been talking about since 2015. We just didn't wake up and say, we need to change it now because of the current situation. We've been talking about this for 5 years.
Right. Ever since Philando Castile, Walter Scott, Eric Garner, and it's continually, it's like nothing.
We've been talking about this for 400 years, over 400 years.
You're right.
City Patrol.
Yeah. So the thing is, now we're talking about change, but in order to change, you got to change the people at the top, and the people at the top must embrace and implement real change, real police change. They just can't talk about it. You know, as Dr. King says, it's not where you stand in a moment of comfort
and convenience.
And the time is always right to do what's right, you know.
The time is right as always to do what's right.
Yeah. So in our closing statement, tell the people, look in the camera, tell the people of Broward County why we should elect you as sheriff of Broward County on August the 18th. Talk to the people.
Well, August 18th, let me say, August 18th is the walk-in day to vote. Early voting starts 10 days prior to that. The mail-in ballots are going to drop 20 days prior to August 18th. We must make sure people understand that we're only going to get one chance at this apple. We cannot make the mistake and believe in, because you raise so much money, because you got so many endorsements, because you have so many political people there, that you're going to make change. Those things indicate to me status quo. Status quo tells me you're of the past. You don't believe in change. You will not do anything for change because you're working for people that don't believe in change. They're status quo people. If we're going to change how we police our communities, how we police in Broward County, we need a real change agent. We need someone that has always and will always stand up for what is right, not politically right, but what is right. You need someone that's going to stand up for human rights as well as civil rights, as well as personal rights. I have not had anything in my past, be it personal or professional, that would disqualify me in any of those categories. Not anything. If you're looking for the leader that's going to usher in, that's going to demand, command, change, you need to vote for Willie Jones. You want to know more about this candidate, WillieJones2020.com? Go ahead, look us up. And if you need to ask a question, ask the question online. I answer all questions on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You want to talk to me, I'll talk to you. You want to hold a town hall meeting that you must do social distancing, and I'll be there. I'll be there. I've always been in the community, always been of the community. Thank you.
All right, retired Broward Sheriff's Office Sergeant Willie Jones. I had the opportunity of working with you, alongside you. I wasn't a police officer, but we worked together in Pompano together, and I enjoyed working with you. And good luck to you, sir. Next in August, and we know if you make the sheriff, get elected sheriff, I should say, that you'll be a good sheriff. So just keep up the good work, and
can I say
we
something
know
to
you'll
that?
do good if you're elected sheriff in Broward County here.
What, Darryl, can I say something to good luck?
Go ahead.
This is a political response. I answer to good luck. Luck I have plenty of. Most of it's bad luck. What I need is your vote.
Okay.
If you want change, I need your vote.
There you have it. Willie Jones, he's running for Sheriff of Broward County. Thank you, sir, for giving us your time today. And we really appreciate you coming on the Adams and Brothers podcast. And anytime you want to come back, you have my number. You can call me and we'll give you a platform to talk to the people of Broward County.
Okay, I will be back. And let's not be fooled. Let's not get hoodwinked. We're talking about change. We're talking about saving lives. Just imagine if we'd have been elected in 2016, how many lives, I'm talking Greg Frazier, Tammy, Corey, you only, how many lives?
A lot more, right?
Yes, how many lives? And I'm not just talking about the physical death. How many African-American people of color have been arrested and had to alter their life because now they can't get a decent paying job? These are the things we need to think about. When you go to vote, say, I want change, I want Willie Jones. Thank you much. Thanks for having me.
It's
Thank
great
you,
to have
Sergeant
you
Willie
on.
Jones.
Thank you. You come back anytime. Come back and talk to us.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Come back and talk to us about anything, regardless in the future. Just let us know.
I'll be back. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sergeant Willie Jones. Thank you, and have a good evening.
You too. Be safe.
You too.
You be safe.